Aloha,
Aloha.
and thank you for joining us today. I'm Dr. Tom Harding, Director of Maui Memory Clinic, and with me today I have Dr. Steve Blake. He is the nutritional neuroscientist here at the Maui Memory Clinic. Dr. Blake is a prolific author, and he recently completed a clinical trial in the Journal of Brain Sciences on reversing dementia with nutrition. Okay, no medicine, nutrition. And so this is a take that you don't hear from every day. So we're going to dive into this with Dr. Blake. And one of the things we're going to talk about is inflammation in the brain, okay? So Dr. Blake, talk about chronic inflammation and how that affects our risk for dementia.
Well, if our brain has chronic inflammation above the levels that we need, then what's going to happen is the cells that police our brain, the glia, or microglia, these are astrocytes that will go in and look at the brain cells, and if they're like a over-enthusiastic police force, if there's inflammation, and they will start killing off the brain cells.
Okay.
If there's too much inflammation. We need to keep the inflammation down. Also, excess inflammation will increase oxidation, and that kills off brain cells too.
This inflammation, is it this glia killing dead brain cells or healthy brain cells, or what's it doing?
It's looking at a brain cell that perhaps could be saved. If it wasn't over-inflamed, they would save the brain cell, but with too much inflammation, it will then kill it off.
Is an inflamed brain cell beyond saving?
Well, it's the inflammation is not in the brain cell, it's surrounding it.
Okay, so it's the microenvironment.
Yes, and the brain's immune system will actually kill off brain cells if there's too much inflammation. And also, it increases the tumor necrosis factor, the interleukins, and makes the brain more susceptible to free radical damage and cell death.
Okay, so yes, inflammation is a bad thing. And how do we get inflammation in our brain?
Well, the same way we get inflammation everywhere else in the body. We get inflammation in our brains. One way is from endotoxins. Endotoxins are the leftover skeletons, if you will, of bacteria. Now, we all know that if we take a piece of meat and we don't cook it, we'll die from the bacteria. So we have to cook the meat. Or if it's milk, when it has to be sterilized so that these bacteria don't kill us. However, what's left over is the shells of the bacteria, and these are called endotoxins.
So pasteurized milk has endotoxins?
Yes, as well as all meat, chicken, and fish. These endotoxins, they're also known as lipopolysaccharides. So they are exactly what they use in studies. Let's say they have a study they want to test an inflammatory drug in rats. First, what do? They give them endotoxins. They make them inflamed, and then they test the drug. Now, this food has endotoxins in it. If there's endotoxins and saturated fat, they get together and go through the intestinal wall into the bloodstream. Now, our immune system is designed to look for these endotoxins in the bloodstream because that means that there's bacterial infection. And so our immune system thinks there's a bacterial infection, so inflammation results as the immune system ramps up and gets really aggressive.
So I get inflammation in my brain through my diet. The things
That's one of the
eating.
ways.
That's one of the ways. What's another way?
Well, probably one of the principal ways to increase inflammation is eating foods that contain arachidonic acid. Now, you may not have heard of arachidonic acid. This is a 20-carbon fatty acid that's, our human bodies make it, all animals make it. But from food, it's most commonly gotten from chicken and eggs. When we eat chicken and eggs, we get more of this specific fatty acid. Now, what does aspirin do to block pain and inflammation? It blocks arachidonic acid from becoming pain and inflammation.
So if I eat chicken and eggs, all I got to do is take an aspirin with it?
Well, that's one way, and that's the American way for sure. However, if you don't eat the chicken and the eggs, you might find that your entire body burden of inflammation has gone down because the arachidonic acid gets processed by the cyclooxygenase enzymes COX-1 and COX-2. These are exactly the enzymes that are inhibited by aspirin and Advil and many of these drugs. With the drugs, they slow down the formation of inflammatory leukotrienes and pain-causing prostaglandins.
Okay.
However, what if we didn't eat the chicken and the eggs, and we didn't have excess arachidonic acid? Then we wouldn't have so much inflammation, which not only is inflammatory to our arteries, increasing atherosclerosis and our risk of stroke and heart attack, it's also inflammatory to our joints, increasing the risk of arthritis. It's also inflammatory to our brain, increasing the risk and progression of Alzheimer's disease and Parkinson's disease and other neurodegenerative diseases as well.
Wow, so inflammation is not just a bad thing for the brain, it's a bad thing for my joints, my heart, my veins, everything.
Excess inflammation, yes. And there's no need, of course, to eat chicken and eggs. But when we do, we get this excess arachidonic acid, which is found in other animal fat too, but just highest in chicken and eggs.
Wow. Another dietary change. I can feel it coming. Okay, well, what about omega-3s for inflammation? Does it help fight the battle?
Well, I'm glad you asked about that, because omega-3s are just the opposite of arachidonic acid. Okay. Omega-3s also are converted by the cyclooxygenase enzymes, COX-1 and 2, into calming leukotrienes that reduce inflammation, into prostaglandins that reduce pain, and into thromboxanes that reduce the clogging of the arteries, the blood coagulation. So the omega-3s are really valuable. Now, the best source would be from ground up flax seeds, ground up chia seeds, or ground up hemp seeds, or ground up perilla seeds. This is the best source because it's fresh and it's whole. And in fact, the flax seeds are really nice because I've just been reading some studies on how they lower blood pressure.
Oh.
And a lot of people struggle with high blood pressure.
Yes.
And the average in a giant Maida study was about 3 millimeters of mercury less of the systolic blood pressure, which is a nice little relief, but you're actually taking the flax to get your omega-3s.
Yes. Okay, so my goal is to keep inflammation down in my brain and my body and my joints so that when I'm old I can move and I have a memory. And it sounds like my diet is one of the key ways to do it. Certain foods I eat raise it. Are there certain foods I can eat that would lower it?
Oh, certainly. For instance, soy foods, and I do because of the pesticides used on the soy, and about 80% of it is genetically modified to take more pesticides. Wow. I recommend the organic soy products rather than the sprayed ones. The organic soy products contain genistein and diastein, and these two are powerfully anti-inflammatory. They help with joint pain. They help reduce the damage to the arteries during atherosclerosis, and important to the brain, they reduce inflammation in the brain itself.
Okay, so I'm new to the plant-based diet. I did not know there was a difference in soy. I thought it was all good. So you're telling me that there's an organic soy product, and that makes sense because it's a plant.
Well, they're, like I say, about 80%, perhaps as high as 90% now of the soy grown in America is genetically modified so that it can take more of the pesticides that they spray on it, which means they spray more pesticides on it.
Of course they do.
Plus, we have the unknown effects of the genetic modification, which have not been studied enough to be sure whether it's safe or not.
And the organic soy is non-GMO, is that correct?
It's non-GMO, and of course it's non-sprayed too.
Well, there you go. So it might cost me a little bit more.
It really is still quite cheap.
I would say so.
Soy products are very cheap. Whether it's edamame, soy, the greens, soybeans are very cheap. Easy to find them frozen in organic form. Tofu, you can buy even the giant box stores organic. It's extremely cheap stuff, which is bizarre because it's also very healthful.
So I'm eating soy as a meat substitute. So I'm reducing the meat to get that inflammation out of my body at the same time.
By reducing the meat, you're reducing the endotoxins that would increase inflammation, you're reducing the arachidonic acid that would increase inflammation, and you're reducing other substances that are not good for you, like excess saturated fat. And the soy certainly doesn't have that. So you can change over and improve your health in many ways. Okay. We're talking about the brain, but the brain is part of our bodies.
Yes. Okay. What about vitamin D? Does that help in the fight against inflammation?
It does. Vitamin D has been shown in many scientific studies to help fight inflammation all over the body. It's been found to especially help inflammation in the brain. And we do need a certain amount every day, and generally people don't get enough.
Well, how do I get vitamin D? If I don't drink milk, which is vitamin D fortified, if I don't drink that, how do I get vitamin D?
Well, one way is from the sun. But most people don't get enough sun to get enough vitamin D.
Okay.
So I think that all of the experts are agreeing that we should take supplementary vitamin D. Vitamin D3 instead of vitamin D2. Vitamin D3 is cholecalciferol. And vitamin, that's a natural form that we find in our body. That's the form I use in the Brain and Body Food.
Which, real quick plug here, Dr. Blake's got his Brain and Body Food supplement out, and I'm looking here, and it does have lots of vitamin D in here. And we discussed earlier the difference between cheap vitamins and quality vitamins. You can check other videos out, but just a quick plug there, Dr. Blake.
Thank you.
If you're looking for D supplementation, go here.
Well, one thing that we share, Dr. Harding and I, is that the only supplement we take is a Brain and Body Food because it's fairly complete in giving us the essential vitamins and minerals. And I put 1,000 IUs, which is 25 micrograms of vitamin D3 in this vitamin, the highest quality form. And that may be enough. When I get my blood tested, I get enough vitamin D. However, there's some places in the world where you may need even more. So I would not discourage you from taking up to but not exceeding 4,000 IUs a day.
Okay. All right. So fighting inflammation in the brain, you don't hear about it that much in the mainstream media, but if you are trying to educate yourself on dementia prevention, and if you're a baby boomer, I highly recommend that you educate yourself, and you're going to discover that inflammation is a real problem.
And you know, one of the ways that inflammation is a problem in the brain is that the delivery of our blood to our brain cells is crucial. And inflammation affects the arteries themselves and makes them less able to open and close and deliver that blood where and when it's needed. Certain neurons are working more, they open up the arterioles and they get more blood. And so we really need to keep inflammation down so that our nerve cells don't get short on nutrients or oxygen, in which case they're likely to die off.
Oh, wow. There you have it. Fight inflammation, save your brain. Dr. Blake, thank you for joining
Dr.
us
Harding.
today.
It's a pleasure.
Very, very fortunate to have you here with us today. Aloha.
Aloha.